Alright, we're going live. Hey! Alright, so I talked about this a little bit ago. I'm going to be trying this new format a little bit. Welcome to Full Circle. Sorry, started in the middle there. I talked a little bit about this being a new format that I have my microphone way too far away. Hopefully you could all hear me before that, and now I have cards all over my desk. Good job with the first try on something new. So I talked about this a bit on the last episode, and I've talked a bit about it on some social media, but I'm going to try to sort of have a format where I just throw a video up when there is something to talk about, and talk about it, and then the video will only pertain for like however long the topic needs, and then it'll get posted and you can check it out later. So just as a quick example, and this is sort of a tangent to what we're going to talk about, but as a quick example, like before I would do two to four different like model unit entries for the faction and talk about them. Now you'll see me post, like, instead of say like Tharn Wolf Riders, Tharn Wolf Rider Champion, Tharn Blood Weavers, Tharn Blood Trackers all in one episode. You're going to see those be like 4 different episodes, and they'll be, if I only have 5 minutes to talk about, there'll be 5, and if I have 15, there'll be 15 or 20 or whatever the case may be. So it also lets me sort of do this a little quicker. You'll probably see less green screen as a result because it takes, I want to be able to set these up quick, do the video, and go about my time. So anyways, today, one of the things that dropped that I haven't yet been able to talk about because I've been trying to do on Wednesdays, I'm going to keep doing the Theme Force series that I have, although there's only one of those left. But so right now what we're going to do is talk about the Blindwater CID and how that impacted Circle specifically, since their minions are things that we can use, and there's some larger changes to the game that were introduced as part of it. So let's just get into it. I'm going to go through the developers notes that are on the privateer website that probably Pagani wrote, but it doesn't actually specify, it just says developer notes. So we're just going to go through it in order. If there's something big to talk about, we'll talk about it, and if it's smaller, then I'll just maybe make a note and sort of, we'll see how that goes. So right off the bat, though, we've got one that is very, very relevant to Circle, and that is Spiny Growth. Reduce the cost of Spiny Growth Animus to 1. Affected models, Carnivian, Bull Snapper, Getorix, Razorworm, and Renodon. In their notes, they say they made the Spiny Growth Animus 1 point cheaper. In practice, many war beasts rarely have the resources to cast the Animus, having to forego a large amount of offensive potential to put a huge stress on the Warlock to leech all the fury generated made this Animus less efficient than we wanted. In most situations where the Warlock would cast this Animus, it's better to simply have 2 more transfers. Reduction of cost should make casting this Animus the preferred option more often. I think those notes kind of summarize it pretty well, right? Like Getorix, on the approach, a lot of times he could certainly afford to cast, to throw that 2 Fury out there, and then the Warlock, your battle group was maybe not that far forward, so it made sense. I can't honestly think of a time I've ever cast Spiny Growth on my Warlock, and now I'm thinking of times that's going to make a lot of sense. I think this is a big boon to Chromac 2, who pretty much can have Getorix all the time anyways. It's a big boon to Getorix in Call of the Wild, specifically with Chromac 1 or Chromac 2, because now Spiny Growth is going to cost 0. I think Devourer's host lists with Getorix are going to really like to see this again. Sometimes he's like the solo heavy beast in like the Kruger 1 type lists that I've played, and that others have played. And in lists like that, where his survivability is very paramount to the list being able to do what it needs to do, I think that being able to cast more Spiny Growth is going to be a big deal. And Getorix costs 21 points. Like, I think this is the least of the benefits that we could see a beast at that point level, even with his offensive output, being able to get. So I think this is a very good change. I think it increases Chromac 2's playability. I think it makes Getorix a very compelling piece with Chromac 1 as well, because he could throw the +2 armor on Getorix, and now he's always going to be +4 armor. I think there's some interesting play still if you want to play Devourer's Host with Baldur 2, where he's getting the +3 armor from Roots of the Earth. So overall, like, this doesn't really ultimately make like massive strides into changing who, like, the identity of Getorix or the identity of a faction, but it's a very good change and a very welcome change, and one I'm definitely excited to see going forward. Counterblast, reduce the cost of Counterblast to 1. Affected models are Chiron, the Gunbore, Ironback Spitter, Mammoth, Scareth, Stinger, and Tariff. And then I'm not going to read the blurb here. As you can tell, none of those models are models that we have, but basically the reason for the change was the same as Spiny Growth. You know, if you're playing against those particular beasts, I would look out, because it's a good Animus, and again, being able to pay 1 means it's going to maybe be cast, and paying 2 means you probably only do it in like specific situations. So good change for the game. Doesn't really affect Circle that much. Scorn's Extoller Soulword. In the guidance rule, delete the word faction. We'll come back to this when we get to the Bogtrog Mistpeaker changes below. The Death Knell in Grimkin, so this is sort of an odd one to see, I suppose, here, but in Grimkin got, in the second sentence of Bring Out Your Dead rule, remove the word faction, the special delivery rule, and in the special delivery rule, remove the word faction. Changes are byproduct of the Boilmaster and Spirit Cauldron unit. Removing faction has no functionality change to Grimkin, but it allows the Spirit Cauldron to function in a much more interesting way. So we haven't seen the Spirit Cauldron's final rules because it's not released, I think, until February. But presumably what this means is it also will be able to do what we thought from the CID, which is hand out. It's going to be able to hand corpses to non-faction models. And this is a very, very big change for our Devourer's host lists, and Chromac 2 in particular, because it sort of changes. He can play Call of the Wild now and still sort of be like stocked up on corpses all the time. So definitely a very welcomed change to see there. Just pop that out real quick. So that's fantastic to see. You know, presumably we haven't seen the final rules for the Boilmaster. When we do, we'll talk more about that, but for the time being, that's the inference there that I think that we are decently safe to make. You know, we'll see how it goes. Alright, continuing to minions. Jaga Jaga the Death Charmer. Reduce Warbeast points to 27, increase the range of Serpent Strike to 2, replace her feat with her feat Legion of Death with Vengeful Spirits. I'm not going to read all of Vengeful Spirits. Basically, her feat is going to become D3 plus 5 enemy models. You're going to get D3 plus 5 like Sack Strikes, basically, from her feat. So I would say her feat is toned down, but a little bit more straightforward. It's still a little clunky when you read it. Like I said, I'm not going to go through it right now. But basically, the idea is if you're playing against her, expect that she's going to be able to make 6 to 8 5-inch sacrificial strikes at you as her feat. It's strong utility. It means if she can get pieces in the right place, that she's going to be able to scalpel out key models and things of that nature. So just something to be aware of. The big change to her is she's losing Spell Piercer and gaining Signs of Importance, which, if you're unfamiliar, is a 4-cost non-upkeep spell that gives friendly faction models gain additional die on attack damage rolls, discard the low. It's the reason that Vlad 1 is so good, and this spell is bananas. It is a game changer for Jaga Jaga. It's a game changer for minions. I would definitely, if you've never played against her, I would definitely spend this time, spend a little time reading what she does, thinking about how she's going to build lists, because I think if you have a minions player, if a minions player is anywhere, there's a very strong chance that she is one of the 2 casters that bring it to the table. Malek the Dreadbound, replace the stats and attacks of Death Pact with the following. Death Pact now is a 3-cost range self, covers the control area, non-upkeep spell that says while in Malek's control range, friendly faction warrior models gain +2 armor, and undead models are not affected while out of formation, and it lasts for 1 round. And he also gains Soul Harvester, which is when target friendly faction model / unit destroys a living enemy model with a melee attack, spellcaster gets the soul token. Basically, this is going to make, if you do see do see Malak, the sort of like build you would see from him in Mark II, where he would bring 2+ units of Gatorman Posse, I think is going to be very viable here. They're already defense 12, armor 16 with unyielding and with the ability to give themselves concealment, and now they're going to get another +2 armor all the time. Plus, they will get another +2. I believe they get another +2 armor from his feet as well. He can get more souls now, and getting more souls means he can cast more spells. And he has access to Mortality, which is a very strong spell. And then there's another change we'll get to below, but the Witch Doctor gains Death Ride, which lets undead models get an additional inch of movement, which is going to make, or maybe it's +1 speed, one of the two. I think it's an additional inch. We'll see it in a little bit. So this list is going to be a little faster than you'd expect, and it's going to hit a little harder than you'd expect. I think you'll see more Malak, not as much as Jaga, but if you do see him, it's going to be a particularly tough list for some Circle things to deal with, because it's you've got Gatorman Posse that are 8 wounds, decently high armor, they can be knocked down, tough, and pretty tanky. So watch out for that. The Blindwalker reduced the cost to 10. Nothing really big here. It's an arc node. It's a 10/20 with like 27 boxes or something. Fury 3. I think you'll see it on the table more, so maybe just take a look at what it did and pay attention. The Bone Swarm gets Pathfinder and Steady. Nothing that's a big deal here. I think the Bone Swarms gain from Barnabas 2 and from the Spirit Cauldron coming out, being able to give it corpses. But overall, I mean, it's still... so pay attention. It's definitely one of those lights that can trade up for its points, potentially with enough corpses. But overall, not a huge deal. Bull Snapper gets the Spiny Growth change, and Torpid is now optional. Again, not a big deal. Watch out with like Rask and stuff. With since they have access to Rage, they can also trade up pretty hard. Pardon me. The Ironback Spitter reduced cost to 14, and Counterblast change that was already mentioned. Again, another piece, just watch out for. I don't think it's going to be a game changer. I think you'll see them with Jaga Jaga. I think you'll see them with some of the other... I think they're good with any of the Blindwater casters, potentially. You'll see them cast Counterblast more, and they pair up pretty well with Quack, the Quack Slick Spine and Gib that are coming out, so watch out for that. Swamp Horror goes up to 15 points but gains Chain Strike, so that's the 4-inch reach rule, and he already has Chain Weapon, so I think they're speed 4, so naturally you've got a 11-inch threat range on a charge. They can pull models even closer to their non-tentacles. With the Rage Animus, they can hit pretty hard. They get Overtake with Will Work for Food. I do think you will certainly see Swamp Horrors on the table. So just sort of pay attention to what their threat is. Remember that 4 inches and what other threat extensions they may have. And I think you'll be okay. Bogchog Ambushers reduce the point cost of the small unit to 8 and the big unit to 13. So this might make an interesting option to include in some theme forces. Getting down to 8 points is putting them certainly in the range where you're not having to give up too much of what your list is intending to get a unit with ambush. So I think you'll see a little bit more of them on the table. I think they're pretty decent for what they do. So look to see some more of them, and maybe start considering putting them in some list for Circle. Croak Raiders reduce the point cost of the max unit to 16, it was 17, add Pathfinder, and increase the POW from 10 to 11. And just to read the blurb here, it says, they're a unit we are being very cautious with, reducing the point cost for a max unit, adding Pathfinder, and increasing the POW by 1 are all baby steps that we hope will make the unit more exciting, compelling, while not allowing them to replace broad swaths of minion and faction infantry alike. So history lesson here. Croak Raiders, when they were introduced in Mark II, basically were the best thing ever. They were a unit that basically was on par with War Machine units, which still is not something that we really say a lot, I don't think, in the game. And they were POW 12 back then. And basically, you saw people, I mean, the Kruger 2 list with double croaks, and a few other select things. Legion played a lot of them. Scorn was playing them to great effect. Basically, they were just very, very good. Range 10, POW 12, and they had the ability to be boosted very, very frequently because of the oil rule. They were definitely something to fear. They rightly so got some nerfs coming into Mark II, or Mark III rather, and the change to like how faction works and theme force and whatnot. We've seen lots of them. I really think they're better in units of 2. So I don't know that I'm really looking to like throw these into a list, but I think with the points and the Pathfinder and the damage output that they get, I really do think that they're in a range where I would consider using them in lists as my minion unit if I wanted a larger unit, because I think they're very flexible with what they can do. And POW 11 I think puts them in that area where they're right. This unit isn't going to be like so oh my god good that they have to be played, but I think it puts them in a really good spot where you're going to maybe play them. The one thing at POW 11, they're pretty comparable in a lot of ways to Blood Trackers, but they're longer range. The POW is the same against the prey, but then you know, if we have other things that do fire, the oil is more relevant. So like the Wold White has the ability to put a lot of fire out there, so if you can get a lot of oil spread around. And the fact that you get the oil for the POW 12 fire roll if it doesn't go out is also another big piece here. So watch out for them. I think you're going to see them with Jaga. I think that they might be worth a little bit of testing in minion units inside a circle, but that's kind of there. If we ever get a theme that allows multiple units, I'm probably going to test 2 of these again with someone like Kruger 2. We'll see. Gatorman, Boker, and Swamp Shamblers go to point cost 10. They looked, I believe what they said in the video when they talked about this change in the CID was, we looked at Alexia and the Risen, and then we changed them to 10 points. Basically, they cost more than she did and still don't do as much as she does, so time for a point cost reduction. Posse get cheaper. The max unit goes down to 16. I think it was 17. And offerings to Kosk gets changed to, and I think basically, I think it used to say they reroll their first mist, and now it just says reroll missed attack rolls. I assume each attack roll can only be affected once. So, Linus Wesselbaum and Edria Loyor, I can't say elf names, replace the mercenary text with following. Basically adds Crucible Guard, Signar Ret. I don't know what was there before, but that's what it says now. Replace heal with first aid. First aid is basically the same thing except for it's not faction typed. Edria loses Arcane Bolt but gains Windburst. And Windburst says it's a range 10, AoE 4, POW 12, and cloud effects overlapping the AoE will expire. So they're a pretty big change actually. The fact that Linus can heal friendly models is nice. But the biggest change here really is the fact that if you bring them along, Edria can remove cloud effects. So I've already been testing them a little bit. My opponent didn't even actually cast their cloud, do the thing that put the clouds down because she was there. So I'll take that as a win. But I think more things that help us help the game combat cloud walls, the better. Because there's still a choice, so the cloud wall doesn't lose its power until a lot of people bring these, but it does give people, you know, some counterplay there. And I think them playing for Circle, and the other thing that's pretty relevant here is they're a unit. So in some cases, when you really need to make sure you have a unit in a list that maybe is otherwise light in that area, they're going to be a good option for you. They still have guns as well. Edria has a way to keep them safe. They're 5 points, which is very efficient, like as units go. So cool unit, and definitely good changes. Definitely check them out. The Bogchog Misspeaker goes up to command 8, and the guidance rule that I mentioned before, delete the word faction. So now this is relevant. So guidance is the target model gains eyeless sight, and their weapons gain damage type magical. We usually don't have too much trouble with the latter, but with the former, This now means you could drop this into a list, and somebody like Tanith now can easily ignore stealth and clouds to shoot their really good gun. Someone like Kruger can get all of his spells without worrying about stealth or without worrying about clouds. Same thing with, you put it on one of his Geomancers. You put it on the Fulcrum, who loves not having to deal with clouds. Pardon me. Yeah, any number of things like that. I think being able to just like easily ignore stealth is going to be a pretty big boon to more than a couple lists. So definitely something to take a look at and see how it plays. I'm excited. I think this will probably be enough to finally want to paint one or get one painted when the time is right. But there'll probably be some lists that I test this out in, and we'll see how that ends up. The Croak Hunter gets Hunter reposition 3 and is reduced to 3 points. I don't think this really changed anything for Circle, because I think the 3-point cost area is sort of so you can bring multiples of them. I would think they seem okay. But I don't think this is gonna like light the world on fire with people playing them suddenly, and I don't think that they're that scary, and I don't think they're probably the thing you're looking for in your solo slot in your theme. Witch Doctor just has magic ability now because none of them are attack spells. Dominate Undead is now Death Ride, which is the 1 inch of movement within command, and then Zombify got replaced with an ability that gives a faction model Ghostly. If these changes said non-living for the first and said friendly instead of friendly faction, we would probably look at these guys. As it is, apologies. As it is, I don't really see this being. This isn't relevant to us as players of Circle. Watch out for it within minions as your opponent, though, where I mentioned it with Malok, but also anything being able to get Ghostly means they're immune to free strikes, means they can get through terrain. So it's going to be a strong piece for that reason. Throg goes down to 5 points, gets Pathfinder, gets Prowl. At this point, this makes him actually a viable option to put in your list, I would say. I think he already has AD as well, so he has, I think, 2 POW 11s and a POW 12, something like that. He disrupts on hit, he stops magic, he removes upkeeps and focus from whatever he hits, and Animi, I think. So, like, I think he could be in the right list. I think that he may now have a place. I think you're more likely to see him in minions, where he can maybe be one of the free solos, but I do really think that, and I haven't tested anything yet, but I do think that he's in a spot now where I could see adding him to lists, because he could, the utility he'll bring, and he now has a little bit better chance of getting across the table, and if he doesn't, he's a little bit cheaper. So that's all there. And then at the bottom are just some updates to Theme Force write-ups for adding Linus and Andrea, basically. So those are the Blindwater CID changes. Move my head, I forgot to turn that light off, sorry guys. Those are the Blindwater CID changes. I think overall, nothing that's going to like be game-changing to the point of like, oh god, I can't believe they did that. The Croaks have the chance, but I think they're in a fine place. But I think a couple good cost of living updates for things for Circle are great, and I think a few of those minions are definitely going to be viable, like additions to some of the options we look at to play as Circle players. Specifically the Bog Truck Mist-Speaker, Linus and Andrea, the Throg, and then coming out the Boilmaster and Spirit Cauldron, I think are going to be a good addition for us. That's pretty much it. So those things are going to be pretty good. I think that this is a great change. I think it's good change for the game. I think it's good for minions. And anything that brings diversity in what we see on the table is going to be good. So, anyways, that's going to be all for this particular episode. I'm going to try to get another episode out. I'm going to try to get another show out sometime soon where I talk through ADR and... or it might be multiple episodes depending on how I'm going to do it. I want to talk about the casters we have what that means for us, and then we may do another one where I talk about sort of the outlook champions wise in general, like what to worry about from each faction, what my guesses are, and what people are going to play and things like that. So anyways, thanks for watching. As always, thank you to Griffin's Roost Painting. Check out griffinsroostpainting.com or Griffin's Roost Painting on Facebook to see some awesome painted stuff and get some of your own too. Anyways, so that's going to be it for this one. Like I said, a little bit shorter this time, still maybe a little longer than I was aiming for, but we're going to try to keep doing this and talk through relevant stuff. So thanks for watching.